My 27 female, soon to be sister in law, 22 female, said something about my 3 month old that made me really uncomfortable. My soon to be sister in law, Helen, was over visiting today. Helen loves our 3 month old and loves being around her. A little info on Helen. She's young, 22, kind of immature, and has terrible anxiety. She babysat our daughter once, and my husband's father was there. I was a little nervous to let Helen do it herself because I haven't known her super long, 1 to 2 years, I think. So it was a good trial run with Grandpa there. I totally trust him. Anyways, we were talking about babies crying and how it can really cause your blood pressure to rise and be sensory overload. Well, at one point, Helen said something along the lines of, "She's so precious, but sometimes when she cries, it makes me want to just put a pillow over her face." I was shocked. In the moment, I didn't really know what to say or do, so I just laughed it off. But now I'm completely uncomfortable with Helen ever watching our daughter alone. My husband agrees. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Helen is marrying my husband's brother. Helen currently lives with my husband's sister, Lily. When we were looking for a sitter for the first time, we texted Grandma, Grandpa, and Lily, purposefully leaving Helen out because I wasn't too sure I wanted her to babysit. Lily couldn't babysit, but since her and Helen lived together, Lily asked Helen, and then we felt like it would be rude to say no, and since Grandpa was going to be there, we were okay with it. Now, how do we go about talking to Lily so that we can still have her babysit, but let her know not to ask Helen if she's unavailable? Should we even do that to her or just forego asking either of them? Is that too much to put on Lily? I get that people have intrusive thoughts that cross their minds and that just people sometimes think something they never actually do. But to verbalize it about my child to me just made me really uncomfortable. My husband told me he hopes I die during my surgery. I am getting a gastric bypass in 2 weeks. I have had this plan for over a year when I got insurance. It was a snap decision, but my weight has been an issue my whole life, and my GP has been pushing me to get the surgery after multiple failed attempts at trying to lose it myself and multiple health issues being made worse by my weight. A year ago, I made the decision during my lunch break to get health insurance, and the fortnightly payments have pretty much kept me motivated in my journey to better myself because, oh my god, it's so much money. My husband was so angry when I called and told him I signed up for the insurance. He told me it was a waste of my money and I didn't need to lose weight, but after a short argument, he didn't bring it up again. Months went by and I forgot about it because I had a whole year to wait before I could do anything, but I was taking steps to better myself in other areas. I started dressing nicer. I went into a clothes store for the first time in a decade and spent $1,000 on a new wardrobe, which sounds like a lot, but I've hated myself for so long. I only wore t-shirts and joggers. I went to the hairdresser for the first time in 6 years. I went to the dentist. I'm looking into maybe braces. I started my bachelor's of data science. Like when I say I have completely taken this as a chance to become a new person, I am not joking. I want to come out of this being proud of who I am and not just the same me in a skinnier body. My husband is not supportive at all of this. Every step of the way, he told me that I'm just doing the wrong thing. I'm spending too much money. The clothes I wear don't look good. I'm not smart enough to do data science. I just ignored it because I thought maybe if I improved myself, it would motivate him to do the same. He doesn't even need to get a better job or anything like that, but maybe he could cook more or do stuff around the house or take care of things I can't because I'm so busy. But he won't. Like, we're only 25 and 26. We can do anything we want. Our life isn't over yet, and we have only just started it. He doesn't have to spend the rest of his life doing nothing. The closer we got to my surgery date, the more he would send me videos of bariatric surgery patients telling their stories going wrong to scare me out of doing it. He would tell me statistics of me gaining weight back and that I'll probably still be fat, so there is no point. After about a week of this, I snapped and an argument ensued. I called him lazy and said that he's living off my money, so I don't know why he complains so much. He told me he hopes I don't wake up from the surgery and walked out. He won't answer my calls now, and I think in 2 weeks I'm going to come back out of surgery without a stomach or a husband.
Am I in the wrong for not staying the night after I third wheel on a first date with a guy and his mom? Last night, I, 26 female, went on a first date with a new guy, 28 male, that I'm talking to. I've known him for a couple months, but we haven't started talking until recently. Last week, he asked me if I wanted to go to a hockey game with him and his mom, and it actually sounded fun to me. I have never been to a hockey game, and I didn't really mind that his mom was going because he had those plans with her first anyways and invited me to tag along. His house is a 2-hour drive from mine, and he lives close to the hockey arena. The plan was for me to stay at his place afterwards so I wouldn't have to make a late 2-hour drive back home. I assumed that when he invited me to a hockey game with him and his mom that we would be sitting next to each other, but I assumed that wrong. After I arrived, he said that his friend and his friend's girlfriend were coming too. He said that he had a set of 2 seats together and a set of 3 seats together. So he said that he wanted his mom to sit with him in the 2 seats first and that I would sit with his friend and friend's girlfriend in the 3 seats. Keep in mind, I did not know his friend or his friend's girlfriend. I just met them last night. There are 3 periods in the game, so he wanted his mom to sit with him for the first period of the game and I would sit with his friend and his friend's girlfriend. Then we would switch and I would sit with him and his mom would sit with his friends for second period. and for the third period, we would switch again. He had bought the 3 seats together first for him, his mom, and myself. When someone offered those 2 seats closer to the court, he bought those too, and then invited his friend and friend's girlfriend to come so I would have someone to sit with. After the first period, he changed the plans, and him and his mom came to sit with me in the 3 seats, and his friend and his friend's girlfriend went to the 2 seats. I believe his friend said something to him about it because his friend also thought it was strange to make me sit with them when we could all 3 sit together and they could go to the other seats. I'm glad this change happened because I felt like it was weird to have me and his mom switch places like that. And the 3 seats together were really good anyway. They were lower level and we could see the entire court. Now let's backtrack a little bit. My mom, who was keeping my dog, texted me. Anyone that knows me knows that my dog is my absolute baby. He's 12 years old and has been with me through so much. I love him so much and will drop anything to take care of him. He has degenerative disc disease, which is a problem in his spine. The discs in his spine can get inflamed and cause him immense pain where he's not able to walk at all. So, when my mom texted me that my dog was having a flare-up and was not doing well, I immediately knew that I would need to go get him for my mom and take care of him after the hockey game. While my mom is a great caregiver for my dog, I would feel so much better being home with him and taking care of him myself. He's ended up in the animal hospital for multiple days before because of his condition. I didn't want it to happen again. So, I told my dad after the first period that I would probably go home tonight and take care of my dog instead of staying. I explained to him what was going on. He immediately seemed annoyed, saying it's just a dog and that the dog will be fine and you better stay the night with me. And whoa, I immediately felt icky with that response. I could forgive the feelings towards my dog just being a dog, but I'm aware that people who aren't dog parents may not understand the love that we have for our pets. They're family, but his statement saying I better stay with him really didn't sit well with me. After the game, we took an Uber back to his house. He started arguing with me about wanting to leave and take care of my dog. He raised his voice at me as well, saying, if your dog is that important, then just go. Get out. You're wasting time just sitting here. He also said, you could at least give me a back rub before you leave. I was utterly stunned at the words coming out of his mouth. I gathered my things and walked out of his bedroom, closing the door behind me. A moment later, he came out of his room and rushed downstairs to lock the door behind me. He was still raising his voice and fussing at me, saying I was full of bullshit. I walked myself to my car, which was across the parking lot in his townhome complex. I got in my car, shocked that it just went down, and started driving away. A few minutes after driving, he called me and started fussing again. He told me it was a slap in the face for me to leave when the entire night was all about me and he was doing everything he could to make sure I had fun. Honestly, I disagree with that statement because of how he handled the seating arrangements. But I wasn't even upset about that anymore. The reason I was driving home was because my dog was in pain and I wanted to be there with my dog. I tried to explain it again once more, but he started yelling and cussing again, so I hung up the phone. So, am I in the wrong for driving home instead of staying at his house after the date? Am I in the wrong for kicking my pregnant daughter out and changing the locks on her and my husband? Okay, so I, 47 female, found out earlier today that my daughter, 19 female, let's call her Jane, and my husband, 53 male, John, have been sleeping together since her 18th birthday. She's pregnant, but not by him. The whole situation is even worse since she's in a long-term relationship with her boyfriend of 4 years. It was around 2 in the morning when I found out that Jane and John had been sleeping together when I went through his phone. I had seen explicit text messages and photos dating back to over a year ago. As soon as I saw those, I woke my husband up and started screaming. He was denying everything, so I went into my daughter's room and woke her up. She admitted to everything and said that they've been in a romantic relationship since she was 18. I couldn't talk. I didn't know what to do. I stood there for about 2 minutes before I spoke a word. The only thing that I said was, both of you pack your bags and get the fuck out. If you're not out in 30 minutes, I'm calling the cops. And watched as they packed their things and left. The next morning after they left, I went to the store and got what I needed to change the locks. Both of them have tried coming back and I won't answer the door. I'm getting texts from my husband's family and they're calling me a whole bunch of names and saying that I'm wrong for kicking them out. Everyone's saying how I should at least not let my daughter back in the house until she can live on her own because she's pregnant. Should I let her back in? Am I in the wrong for kicking her out?
Storytime about how I dated my mom's graper. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and trigger warning for grape. I had a very charmed upbringing. My parents were both independently wealthy and pretty much gave me everything I ever wanted. I'm also an only child, so I got their attention constantly. When I was 17, my mom and dad started having problems, and the only reason I found out is because I would hear them arguing from time to time. But in front of me, they always made the effort to be kind to each other. About a year later, I met this really cute guy at the gym. He made every effort to talk to me for about a week. Finally, after a week, he asked me out on a date, and I said yes. He was extremely charming, good-looking, handsome, kind, intelligent, everything you could ever want in a man. And did I mention that he was a very successful businessman? He had a house in Aspen, one in California, and properties all over Texas. We dated for 2 months, and all I really noticed was that he was very jealous. If he caught a guy looking at me, he would get very upset. He was very territorial, and at first I thought this just meant that he loved me. Do you see where this is going? To confuse you some more, 6 months before I met this guy, my mom had been raped. It happened while she was showing some property. The guy was never caught. My mom spent about a week in the hospital. She became a recluse. She went to live in a cabin that my dad and her owned. Well, during Christmas, I decided to take my boyfriend to this cabin. Go to part 2. Story time about how I dated my mom's graper. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. And trigger warning for grape. After my mom got graped, she became a recluse and went to live in this really fancy cabin her and my dad owned. And like I said, I started dating this guy and it was right around Christmas. So I decided to take him to meet my parents at the cabin. Like I said, my mom was a recluse and she just wasn't the same after the grape, which of course I completely understand. It was a very traumatic thing that she went through. So when I brought my boyfriend at the time over, I could tell there was something up. She tried to stay away from him, didn't talk to him, and basically wouldn't even look him in the eye. The day after he and I arrived, she asked me if we could leave. I was extremely offended. I didn't understand why she didn't like him and she wouldn't tell me. I even got into a huge argument with my mom defending him. My boyfriend actually left earlier and that's when my mom told me everything. My boyfriend was her graper. It all started when she had an affair with him. The affair lasted 2 months and when she broke it off, he became obsessed. He followed her everywhere, called her every single day. And I remember that my parents had changed their phone number and I couldn't figure out why. My mom and I were both in tears. I came to the realization that I had done it with my mom's graper, and my mom was still dealing with her own trauma. We decided to tell my dad the truth. When we all went to confront him, his house was empty. There were no signs of him. He changed his number, and we never saw him again. We keep getting phone calls though, and I think it's him. He used me to get close to my mom. What should I do? My girlfriend left me on my birthday to go be with her guy best friend. I, female 22, and my girlfriend 22. We both came out at the same time and we were actually best friends before we came out. The reason why we both became best friends was because we both knew we were gay, but we didn't really tell anybody, but we knew each other was gay, if you know what I mean. We've been together for 6 months and everything has been actually pretty good, with the exception of her guy best friend moving back to the city. When I met this guy, I knew right away that he has feelings for my girlfriend, especially when he gets drunk. He gets super handsy with her. Obviously, I told my girlfriend that I didn't like him around her at all, but she put her foot down and told me that I had no say in it because he was her best friend. I basically didn't bring it up again, but they would hang out all the time and they were always together by themselves. They never invited me to go along with them. My birthday was coming up and her and I had already booked a little cabin in the woods. We were very excited about this, but then she slowly started to ask me if I wouldn't mind if her best friend joined us. And I told her I didn't want him to be there. It was my birthday and I was paying for the cabin. You see, my girlfriend's really broke, so I basically pay for everything. Then she threw a tantrum and said that I was being controlling and that I didn't want to let her have fun. Then she picks up the phone and calls her best friend to complain about me in front of me. Part 2 is up. My girlfriend abandoned me on my birthday so she could go hang out with her guy best friend. Part 2. After I told her I did not want her best friend coming to my birthday getaway, she threw a tantrum, called him, and complained about me in front of me to him. I was actually so hurt that I grabbed the phone and hung up. She looked at me and told me that I had no right to take the phone from her and blah, blah, blah. That's when I broke down into tears and asked her point blank, do you have a crush on this guy? Immediately, she said no. But then she told me she had a confession. She proceeded to tell me that they both lost each other's V cards to each other, and that's why they were so close. And that because they're trying to work on their relationship, I should let him come to my birthday trip, the one I'm paying for. I asked her if she had feelings for him once again and she said no. And then I asked her if he has feelings for her. This girl just stayed quiet. Then she had the gall to say, what if he does? Is that really that bad? I actually had to explain to her why that would be a bad situation. Finally, my birthday comes around and she is nowhere to be seen. I was waiting for her in my car to drive to the cabin with her. An hour later, after she's supposed to be there, she sends me a text saying that she's gonna stay with him and that hopefully this distance will make our relationship stronger. Instead, I took my whole family to the cabin and now I'm ignoring her. Now she's been calling me nonstop. I took her not showing up as a breakup, but she wants me back. What should I do?
I ruined my mum's life and reputation. Story time. So for the context, my mum and dad have been married for about 43 years now. And from this, I have 6 siblings ranging from the ages of 42 to 18. And there's also my husband, and we've been together since we were 15. So when I got pregnant with my daughter, we ended up moving in with my parents. We got married shortly after my daughter was born. However, my dad's father sadly passed away just a few months after the wedding. And he had left his ranch-style house to my father. So this bit's a little bit complicated, but my dad decided to give us the ranch-style house and they decided to live in the little house that my grandparents had built just next door to the ranch. They said that the ranch would be part of our inheritance and we were completely fine with this. So let's fast forward a little bit. We now have 3 children and I'm now pregnant with what will probably be our last child. Up until all of this story happened, I thought we had a brilliant marriage. We were always super loving to each other. We literally never fought. We went on date nights, we bought each other's gifts. Everything was literally perfect until my world came crashing down on New Year's Eve. So I had literally just returned home from a trip that I'd taken with my girls. Everything seemed completely normal. That was until I walked into my bedroom and saw my mum and husband in bed together. My mum then had the absolute audacity to scream at me and tell me to get out of their bedroom. And I'm not gonna lie, that really shook me up. So unfortunately, my oldest daughter was already in the house and she was getting ready for a party. So she obviously heard everything that had gone on and ran out to see what was happening. And when she did, she saw my mum, aka her grandma, running across the landing in nothing but a bedsheet. Obviously, she was absolutely devastated, so ran to my sister's house. I asked her not to say anything to my sister until I had got the truth from my husband. And when I did find out the truth, I found out the truth. And he told me that they'd been having an affair since before he was 18. They had been seeing each other twice a month since before we were married. So I decided to run some maths and I was absolutely mortified because I worked out that there's a possibility that my twin brothers and youngest brothers could be my husband's children. I called my dad ASAP and told him to get to my house without my mum. I made my husband confess in front of my dad and he was absolutely devastated, of course. I mean, they'd been childhood sweethearts, for God's sake. They dated since high school. And when he went back home to confront her, oh my God, we could hear my mum screaming. So I ended up telling my older sister everything that had happened. We decided to throw my mum a little party. And let me tell you, we invited everyone. All our extended family, all my ex's family. So halfway through the party, I asked my oldest daughter to go and take all the kids down to the basement and just pop a film on, which meant there was only all the adults left in the room. And that is when I told everyone from both families what they had been doing. Most of my family are on my side. Everyone, whoop! It was everyone except my two sisters and the entirety of my ex's family. They all just said I was a massive arsehole for doing it publicly. The word actually ended up getting to my mum's church and they actually called me to verify everything that had happened. Since then, my mum has actually been let go as the children's pastor at the church. And she's now claiming that I ruined her entire life and reputation. My dad has now actually kicked her out and she's living with her 38-year-old sister. Dad ended up insisting on getting a DNA test for the three youngest children, which would have been the twins and my youngest brother. And we have since found out that my twin brothers are actually my husband's biological children. Needless to say, I have kicked him out and he's currently living with his dad. Me and my dad are currently in talks about selling the ranch house and us moving into a much bigger house together. My husband is absolutely appalled that I found out he's actually got 7 children instead of 5, and that means that I'm going to take away half of his business. You see, it's all teed up quite nicely really, because you see, in my state, all marital assets are split 50-50. But what about the ranch, I hear you say? That actually never went into mine and my husband's name. It always stayed in my dad's, so it still belongs to him.